For months, Donald Trump's message to America's allies has been remarkably consistent and remarkably destructive. From sweeping tariffs imposed on friendly nations to openly toying with the idea of overtaking sovereign land to the most recent escalation, threatening 100% tariffs on Canada for daring to make trade deals with China. And across the globe, allies have drawn the same conclusion. Trump's America is no longer a reliable partner. So they're adapting, they're hedging, and increasingly they're moving away. Canada is one of the clearest examples of that shift. Ottawa hasn't just talked about diversification, it has acted on it, quietly reducing economic exposure to the United States and even beginning to loosen military ties once thought untouchable. The most prominent example has been covered many times already, Canada's troubled F-35 fighter jet order. But now a new development has emerged, one that reveals just how consequential this issue has become, not just for Canada, but for the United States itself. Before getting to that turning point, it's worth revisiting how we got here. In 2023, Canada pledged to buy 88 F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter aircraft in the Western arsenal, a true fifth-generation jet with stealth capabilities, advanced sensor fusion, and deep integration with U.S. and NATO forces. For decades, choosing the F-35 was almost automatic for close American allies. It symbolized trust, alignment, and a shared strategic future. But circumstances changed. Canada has purchased only 16 of those jets so far, and shortly after taking office, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a review of the remaining aircraft, a move that came just days after Trump imposed new tariffs on Canadian goods. The timing was impossible to miss. At the same time, the cost of the program exploded. Canada's Auditor General reported that the total price tag had climbed to around 28 billion Canadian dollar, triggering concerns about affordability, long-term value, and political optics. Cost overruns alone are nothing new in defense procurement, but layered on top of trade conflict and rhetorical hostility, they took on a much broader meaning. This is where the story stopped being only about Canada. Reconsidering the F-35 was no longer a simple budget exercise. It became a question of leverage, autonomy, and strategic vulnerability of whether it still made sense to bind Canada's most critical defense systems to a partner that had shown it was willing to use economic pressure even against its closest allies. That concern only deepened as Trump framed tariffs not as temporary negotiating tools, but as permanent instruments of national power. Against that backdrop, Canada began seriously exploring alternatives, and one company moved quickly to capitalize. Swedish defense firm Saab pitched its Gripen fighter jet as a replacement or supplement to the F-35. On paper, the Gripen is a 4.5-generation aircraft, lacking the full stealth capabilities of the F-35, and Canada's own defense department rated it lower in a 2021 evaluation. But Saab's pitch was never only about performance. It was about economics, sovereignty, and control. Saab promised to establish a production line in Quebec, home to much of Canada's aerospace industry. It offered domestic manufacturing, research and development, and access to intellectual property. It even suggested that Canadian-built Gripens could be exported to Ukraine and other markets, anchoring long-term industrial activity instead of a one-time procurement. If Canada were to select Saab's globalized surveillance aircraft alongside the Gripen, the company claimed the combined programs could create 12,600 direct jobs in Canada with additional spillover benefits in research, development, and advanced manufacturing. For a government explicitly trying to reduce reliance on the United States, that offer landed hard. Industry Minister Melanie Joly made clear she intended to leverage competition between Saab and Lockheed. She said she planned to meet Lockheed executives and push them to match Saab's commitments on jobs, R&D, and industrial participation. We have a very interesting offer from Saab, and it is our duty to look at it very seriously. But walking away from the F-35 comes with real risks, and a story that emerged yesterday shows just how serious those risks are. In an exclusive interview with CBC News at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, U.S. Ambassador Pete Huxra issued a blunt warning about the consequences of Canada pulling back from the F-35 order. NORAD would have to be altered. He warned that the United States would likely need to purchase more advanced fighter jets for its own air force and fly them more frequently into Canadian airspace to address threats approaching the U.S. If Canada is no longer going to provide that capability, then we have to fill those gaps. NORAD, the decades-old North American Air Defense Command, allows the closest aircraft, American or Canadian, to respond to threats. And recent history shows how often U.S. jets already operate over Canada. In September, American F-15s responded near Calgary after a bomb threat on a German airliner. 2 years earlier, an American F-22 shot down a suspicious cylindrical balloon over the Yukon. Huxra described the current defense relationship as awesome, but warned that U.S. military interventions over Canadian airspace would increase if Canada does not expand its F-35 purchase beyond the 16 jets currently on order. Those remarks were met with caution. Public sniping only benefits our adversaries and risks undermining the credibility of our shared deterrence. Political disputes come and go. NORAD's mission does not. Huxra remained firm. If Canada selects the Swedish-built grip, and he said NORAD itself would need to be rethought if they decide they're going with an inferior product that is not as interchangeable, interoperable as what the F-35 is. That changes our defense capability, and as such, we have to figure out how we're going to replace that. A former top Canadian national security official called the remarks clearly a political pressure tactic to force the Canadian government's hand. This is another off-the-cuff remark by the ambassador. It can't be ignored, but neither should it be taken as gospel truth from either the administration or the Pentagon. And Canada isn't alone. Denmark, another F-35 buyer, has found itself regretting its purchase amid tensions with Trump over his push to control Greenland. Danish lawmaker Rasmus Jarlov admitted to second thoughts, but said Denmark has little choice now that the F-35 is its only operational fighter. They're in for repairs about half the time, or even more, Jarlov warned. So the Americans have all the power of actually destroying our air force just by shutting down parts supplies. His advice to Canada was blunt. Choose another fighter jet. Canadian public opinion appears to agree. A December Echo's poll found 72% of Canadians support incorporating Sweden's Griffin into Canada's fighter fleet, either by switching entirely or by maintaining a mixed fleet. That option carries its own costs, separate facilities, pilots, and maintenance. But the political message is unmistakable. When asked whether he recognized the implications of Canada choosing the F-35, while many Canadians now view the United States itself as a threat amid Trump's repeated talk of a 51st state and annexing Greenland, Huxra dismissed the idea outright. That's crazy, he said. We're not a threat.